ruthless biker kicked a dog for fun. He had no idea he was about to mess with Keanu Reeves. What started as a peaceful afternoon stroll was about to escalate into a tense, unforgettable showdown, proving once again that you should never mess with a man's dog. Brooklyn Heights was buzzing under the summer heat, the air thick with the scent of hot asphalt and the distant aroma of street food. On the film set of John Wick, cameras, cables, and crew members filled the space, their voices blending into the controlled chaos of Hollywood at work. That's a wrap for this scene, folks. The director's voice cut through the chatter. Take an hour for lunch, be back on time. A wave of relief rippled through the crew, exhausted from filming since dawn. As everyone dispersed, planning their lunch break, one of the crew members called out, "Hey Keanu. We're heading to that new deli on Atlantic Avenue, wanna come?" Keanu Reeves turned, a friendly smile playing on his lips, but his attention quickly shifted to Buddy, the pit bull who had been part of their scenes. The dog stood panting in the heat, tongue lolling out, clearly uncomfortable. "You guys go ahead," Keanu replied, eyes still locked on Buddy. "I think I'll take care of our four-legged friend here. He looks like he could use a break." The dog handler, a lanky man with a clipboard under his arm, stepped forward. "I got it, Mr. Reeves, it's my job." Keanu raised a hand, his expression sincere. "I'd like to do it, if that's okay. Helps me bond with him for the scenes." He hesitated for a second before adding, "Plus, I've always wondered what it's like to have a dog. Even if it's just for a little while." The handler hesitated but finally nodded. "All right, Mr. Reeves. Just be careful, Buddy's sweet, but he can be a handful." With that, Keanu secured the leash, stuffed a few essentials into his leather jacket, and knelt to Buddy's level. "What do you say, Bud? Ready for a walk? Let's find you some water." Buddy's tail wagged in approval, and with a small wave to the crew, Keanu and his unlikely companion disappeared into the streets of Brooklyn Heights, unknowingly walking straight into an unexpected confrontation. The midday sun reflected off the pavement in shimmering waves as Keanu searched for a water source. Buddy's panting grew heavier, his need for hydration more urgent. That's when Keanu spotted a weathered sign up ahead. Iron and Ash. The bar's name was painted in bold, faded letters above the entrance. The unmistakable growl of motorcycles filled the air, and a row of polished bikes lined up outside like armored guards protecting a fortress. Keanu's grip on Buddy's leash tightened. The place radiated a raw, untamed energy, a stark contrast to the trendy cafes and boutiques that surrounded it. Just as he considered turning away, something caught his eye. Between two parked motorcycles stood a public water fountain. Relief washed over him as he led Buddy toward it. He pulled the collapsible container from his pocket, pressed the button to fill it, and watched as Buddy eagerly drank. As Keanu stepped back to let another patron use the fountain, a towering, tattooed man moved in beside him. The tension in the air shifted. The steady flow of bikers in and out of the bar suggested a place where respect was earned, not freely given. And that's when it happened. A sudden, sharp yelp. Keanu's head snapped toward the sound, his gaze locking onto the source of the commotion. A biker, clad in leather and chains, had just kicked Buddy hard. The man laughed, brushing dust off his boot like he had just stepped in something unpleasant. What he didn't know was that he had just kicked Keanu Reeves' dog. And if there's one lesson John Wick should have taught the world by now, it's this. You never mess with a man's dog. As he's well behaved, I don't see a problem at all, she said with a wink. Besides, he's got better manners than some of our regulars. Keanu chuckled, appreciating the relaxed atmosphere of the cafe. In that case, I think we'll stay for a while. Maggie handed him a menu, then leaned down to scratch Buddy behind the ears. "Let me grab a bowl of water for your friend here. And for you, anything to drink while you decide?" "A black coffee would be great," Keanu replied. "Coming right up," Maggie said, flashing a smile before disappearing into the cafe. Keanu leaned back in his chair, watching as Buddy settled in, his body relaxing under the shade. The earlier tension from the bar was fading, replaced by the quiet hum of city life, the clinking of silverware, the low murmur of conversations, the occasional bark from a passing dog. A few tables over, an elderly couple smiled at Buddy, clearly charmed by his presence. Keanu nodded in their direction, returning the warmth. It was moments like these that made him appreciate the simple things: a peaceful afternoon, a loyal companion, a break from the chaos of the film set. When Maggie returned with his coffee and a bowl of water for Buddy, she set them down with a practiced ease. "So, what brings you to our little corner of the world?" she asked, curiosity lacing her tone. Keanu hesitated for a moment before answering. "Just taking a walk with my new friend here. Needed a break from work." Maggie nodded knowingly. "Well, you picked a good spot. Best cafe in Brooklyn Heights, if I do say so myself." Keanu took a sip of his coffee, the rich bitterness grounding him. "I believe it," he said with a small smile. "For now, at least, the world outside could wait. But it hasn't been easy. Those guys, they think they own this part of town." Keanu frowned, his hand still resting on Buddy's back. So, this wasn't an isolated incident. He glanced toward the street where the biker had disappeared, his mind turning over the events of the past hour. First, the confrontation at Iron and Ash, and now this. It wasn't just a random act of aggression, there was something bigger going on. Maggie gave him a sympathetic look and nodded toward Buddy. "Poor guy. I'll bring him something extra on the house." Keanu smiled appreciatively. "Thanks, Maggie. He deserves it." As she walked back inside, Keanu took a deep breath, shaking off the lingering tension. He picked up his sandwich, taking a slow bite, but his mind wasn't fully on the meal. Buddy, sensing the shift in energy, rested his head on Keanu's knee, his warm brown eyes searching his owner's face for reassurance. Keanu reached down and gave him a firm pat. "We're good, Buddy," he murmured. "No one's messing with you again." And though the cafe had returned to its usual hum of conversation, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that this wouldn't be the last time he crossed paths with that biker gang. Something told him that this day wasn't over yet. What started as a quiet meal turned into a nightmare. Someone had poisoned Keanu Reeves' dog. Keanu leaned back in his chair, finally allowing himself to relax after the tense encounter with the biker. He glanced at Buddy, who was now fully focused on his plate, nose twitching at the scent of steak. A small string of drool hung from the side of his mouth. Keanu chuckled. "All right, Buddy. Let's enjoy our meal, we've earned it." For a while, everything was peaceful. The steak was perfect, the coffee strong, and for the first time that day, Keanu felt a sense of normalcy. Buddy seemed to have shaken off the earlier confrontation too, happily devouring his special meal. But even as they ate, a thought gnawed at the back of Keanu's mind. The biker's sneering words. His parting threat. "This isn't over." Pushing the thought aside, Keanu took the last bite of his sandwich and checked his watch. Time had slipped away faster than he expected. "Looks like we need to get going, Buddy," he said, giving the dog a pat. But before they left, he had one quick stop to make. "Mind waiting for me?" he asked Buddy, who tilted his head before sighing contentedly and resting his chin on his paws. Keanu smiled, securing the leash to the table leg. Spotting Maggie passing by, he caught her eye. "Would you mind keeping an eye on him for a moment? Just need to use the restroom." "Of course, no problem at all," she replied with a warm nod. Keanu weaved through the cafe, making his way to the back where a small sign indicated the restrooms. To his frustration, there was already a short line. He considered going back, but the growing pressure in his bladder convinced him otherwise. "I'll be quick." But the minutes dragged on. And with each passing second, an uneasy feeling crept into his gut. Something didn't feel right. By the time Keanu emerged, he was moving fast, his instincts screaming at him. He pushed through the cafe doors, stepping onto the patio. And his heart sank. Buddy was alone. Maggie was nowhere in sight. But that wasn't the worst part. Buddy was choking. The pit bull's chest heaved, his body convulsing as he struggled to breathe. His paws scraped at the ground, his tail limp. A sharp, ragged whimper escaped his throat, his eyes wide with panic. Keanu's blood turned ice cold. Water. I need water, now. His voice rang out, laced with urgency. A younger waitress, her name tag read Lila, rushed over with a bottle of water. With careful precision, Keanu tilted Buddy's jaw, letting the liquid trickle down. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a gut-wrenching heave, Buddy swallowed. The immediate crisis seemed to pass, but something was wrong. The dog's body was weak. His breaths were shallow. His tail, which had wagged so happily just minutes ago, hung lifeless. And then Maggie returned, her face pale. "I'm so sorry," she blurted out, breathless. "The kitchen needed me, but I asked Lila to watch him." Lila stepped forward, looking nervous. "There was a man here," she said hesitantly. Keanu's pulse pounded. "What man?" Lila swallowed. "He seemed friendly. Fed the dog a sausage. I thought it was okay." Keanu's stomach dropped. Lila hesitated, then described him, bearded, chubby cheeks, mohawk, wearing leather gloves, and a vest with a tiger claw insignia. The world seemed to tilt. The same insignia as the bikers from Iron and Ash. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Keanu's jaw clenched. They had poisoned his dog. "Is there a vet nearby?" he demanded, already fearing the worst. Maggie and Lila exchanged a panicked glance before Maggie quickly pointed. 3 blocks down, left at the intersection, you can't miss it." But even as she spoke, Buddy's legs buckled. He collapsed. His body hit the ground hard, a weak, pitiful whimper escaping his throat. His once bright eyes were losing focus. Keanu's heart slammed against his ribs. "No. Not now. Not like this." Without hesitation, he scooped Buddy into his arms. The dog was heavy, his body limp, but adrenaline surged through Keanu like fire. "Hang in there, Buddy. Just hold on." With one last glance at the stunned waitresses, Keanu took off running. His feet pounded against the pavement. People turned, startled by the sight of a man sprinting through the streets of Brooklyn Heights, cradling an unconscious dog. Keanu didn't care. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. Because right now, only one thing mattered. Getting Buddy to the vet before it was too late. A seat across from him. Keanu sat up straighter, his heart hammering in his chest as he braced for whatever she was about to say. "Buddy is stable for now," Dr. Harper said, her voice steady but measured. "The poison was fast-acting, but we got to him in time. The activated charcoal helped absorb the toxins, and the 4 fluids are flushing out the rest. He's responding well to treatment, but we'll need to monitor him closely for the next 24 hours to make sure there are no lingering effects." Keanu exhaled sharply, the tension in his chest releasing just slightly. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Dr. Harper gave a small, reassuring nod. "He's a strong dog." That worked in his favor. "But I won't sugarcoat it, whoever did this used something powerful. We're running further tests to identify exactly what it was. Once we know, we'll have a better idea of any long-term risks." Keanu's jaw clenched at her words. Something powerful. This wasn't just some random act of cruelty. Whoever poisoned Buddy had meant business. "Can I see him?" Dr. Harper hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Come with me." She led him down the hallway, past rooms where other animals were being treated, until they reached a small recovery area. Through the glass window, Keanu spotted Buddy lying on a padded table and 4 attached to his leg. He looked tired, more tired than Keanu had ever seen him, but his chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. Keanu stepped inside quietly, crouching beside him. "Hey, Buddy. You scared me, you know that?" Buddy's tail gave the weakest wag, his brown eyes lifting to meet Keanu's. Even in his weakened state, the dog still managed to thump his tail against the table, as if to say, "I'm still here." Keanu swallowed hard, rubbing the dog's head gently. "We're gonna get through this, okay? Just rest." Behind him, Dr. Harper spoke softly. "He'll need to stay overnight for observation, but if everything looks good by morning, you can take him home." Keanu nodded. He wasn't leaving Brooklyn Heights until Buddy was safe. As he stood up, his hand instinctively found its way back into his jacket pocket, fingers brushing against the folded-up script he had pulled out earlier at the cafe. That moment, the quiet meal, the laughter, the simple act of sharing food with a friend, felt like a lifetime ago. And now? Now, he had unfinished business. The man who did this was still out there. And Keanu had no intention of letting it slide. Jaw tightened as he took in the scene. This wasn't just about Buddy anymore. This was bigger. For a moment, he considered storming in, demanding answers, but logic held him back. He wasn't reckless, he was calculated. If he was going to put an end to this, he needed more than just anger. He needed a plan. Taking a deep breath, Keanu reached into his jacket pocket, retrieving his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and pressed a number. After a few rings, a voice answered. "Hey, man. Long time no see." Keanu exhaled, his grip tightening around the phone. "I need a favor." The voice on the other end chuckled, a low, knowing sound. "You sound serious. What kind of favor?" Keanu's eyes remained locked on the bar across the street, watching as the gang settled inside. The kind that gets a problem solved. There was a brief pause. Then, "Where are you?" Keanu's lips pressed into a thin line. "Brooklyn Heights. Iron and Ash." The voice on the other end let out a low whistle. "You really don't do things halfway, do you?" Keanu didn't respond. He didn't need to. "All right. Sit tight. I'll be there in 20. Keanu ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Across the street, the bar door swung shut, swallowing the gang inside. He took another deep breath, rolling his shoulders back. This wasn't just a fight for Buddy. This was about the neighborhood. The people. The businesses being strong-armed by these guys. And if they thought poisoning a dog was bad, they had no idea what was coming next. Could see the chaos unfold, the bikers caught off guard, some raising their hands in surrender while others hesitated, their bravado quickly fading under the weight of armed law enforcement. Sheriff Hank Morrison stepped out of one of the squad cars, his presence commanding as he adjusted his belt and strode toward Keanu. His sharp eyes swept over the scene before landing on him. "You weren't kidding, Keanu," Hank muttered, crossing his arms as he took in the bar. "This place has been a problem for a while, but we could never get a solid reason to move in. Until now." Keanu nodded, his expression grim. They went too far this time. Poisoning a dog? Threatening the staff? Someone was bound to get seriously hurt sooner or later. Hank exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "We're taking them in for questioning. And if we find anything illegal inside, that's the end of their little reign over this neighborhood." Keanu glanced back at the employee, who now stood by the doorway, watching everything unfold with wide eyes. For the first time that day, the man didn't look terrified. He looked relieved. "This place deserves better," Keanu said, turning back to Hank. "The people who work here, the ones just trying to make a living, they shouldn't have to deal with this kind of fear." Hank clapped a hand on his shoulder. "And now they won't have to." A few moments later, officers began escorting the bikers out in cuffs. The man with the mohawk, the same one who had fed Buddy the poisoned sausage, locked eyes with Keanu as he was being led to a police car. He sneered. "Think this changes anything?" he spat. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Then, in a voice so calm it was almost chilling, he replied, "I think it changes everything." The biker's smirk faltered. As the last of the arrests were made and the police secured the bar, Keanu let out a slow breath. It was over. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. "Buddy." Without wasting another second, he turned to Hank. "Thanks for coming through. I have somewhere I need to be." Hank nodded. "Go. I'll take care of the rest." Keanu didn't hesitate. With purposeful strides, he left the chaos behind, heading straight back to the clinic where his best friend was waiting for him. Buddy's care plan, Keanu felt the weight of the day finally beginning to settle on him. The rush of adrenaline, the tension, the anger, it was all fading now, replaced by sheer exhaustion and overwhelming relief. Dr. Harper gave him an understanding nod. "He's in good hands, Mr. Reeves. Get some rest. Buddy's going to need you at full strength when he goes home." Keanu turned back to Buddy, reaching through the enclosure bars to gently scratch behind his ears. The dog let out a soft, contented sigh, his eyes drooping but still focused on Keanu. Even in his weakened state, he was fighting. "You're a tough guy, huh?" Keanu murmured, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Hang in there, Buddy. Tomorrow, we're getting out of here." Buddy's tail gave another faint wag, and for the first time all day, Keanu let himself believe it. Everything was going to be okay. As Keanu finalized Buddy's care arrangements with Dr. Harper and the clinic staff, his attention was drawn to a small TV mounted in the reception area. The local news was running a report on the arrests at Iron and Ash, the footage showing multiple bikers being loaded into police vehicles. The charges against them were extensive: assault, illegal possession of controlled substances, and most notably, animal cruelty. Keanu's jaw tightened as the reporter mentioned that law enforcement had discovered dog fur on one of the men's boots. While forensic confirmation was still pending, investigators suspected a direct link to Buddy's poisoning. This wasn't just about intimidation or gang turf wars. These men had a history of violence toward people, toward animals. And now, finally, they were being taken down. Justice was being served. Keanu exhaled slowly, taking quiet satisfaction in the fact that Iron and Ash was officially shut down pending further investigation. The same place that had once harbored criminals and threatened the safety of the neighborhood was now empty, its doors locked, its influence gone. Yet, through it all, Keanu's name had remained absent from the news. Sheriff Hank had kept his word. The headlines focused on law enforcement's operation, not on a world-famous actor single-handedly taking down a gang. Good. This wasn't about ego. It was about making things right. As Keanu gathered his things, he gave Buddy one last affectionate pat. The dog, still recovering but noticeably stronger, lifted his head slightly and wagged his tail, slow but steady. "You're a fighter, Buddy," Keanu murmured, his voice soft but filled with warmth. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we're going home." Dr. Harper gave him an encouraging nod. "We'll keep a close eye on him overnight. If everything continues improving, you can take him home first thing in the morning." Keanu thanked the medical team once again before stepping out into the early evening air. The streets of Brooklyn Heights felt different now. Lighter, calmer. As if the tension that had gripped the neighborhood for months had finally started to dissolve. But more than that, something within Keanu had changed too. What had started as a simple walk, just a way to bond with Buddy for the film, had become something real. A fight for justice, a test of character, a moment of truth that had pulled him out of the role of John Wick and into something far deeper. He hadn't just been playing a protector. He had become one. As he neared his hotel, Keanu's phone buzzed. The name of the film's producer lit up the screen. He answered, bracing for impact. "Keanu," the producer started, a mix of concern and frustration evident in his voice. "How's Buddy?" Keanu relayed the latest update. Buddy was stable, recovering well, but needed time. He could almost hear the producer calculating the potential delays, shifting budgets and schedules in his mind. Then, after a heavy sigh, the producer spoke again. "This is going to set us back. We'll need to reshuffle the shooting sequence. Maybe move your solo scenes to the front of the schedule. Keanu remained firm. I get that. But Buddy's health comes first. We can't rush his recovery. A long pause. Then, surprisingly, the producer's voice softened. You're right. We'll make it work. Just keep us updated. Keanu nodded. I'll be picking him up tomorrow. We'll follow all the vet's instructions for his care. The rest of the call focused on logistics, rescheduling, and contingency plans. But beneath all of that, Keanu sensed something else, a shift. In an industry where animals were often treated as just another prop, Buddy's well-being was being prioritized. And that was worth more than any adjusted shooting schedule. As the call ended, Keanu entered his hotel lobby. But before he could pocket his phone, a new message flashed across the screen. Sheriff Hank Morrison. Operation successful. All suspects in custody. Evidence secured. Your involvement remains confidential. Well done, Keanu. Keanu allowed himself a small smile. It was over. As he made his way upstairs, exhaustion finally caught up with him. He was ready for sleep, real sleep, without the weight of worry pressing down on him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, returning to set, ensuring Buddy's continued recovery, adjusting to an unexpected delay in production. But for now, Keanu Reeves allowed himself a moment of peace, knowing that he and Buddy had faced something real together. And that bond? That wasn't just acting. That was for life.